Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Framework Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Hopkins, and today I'm joined by somebody who I've had the pleasure to know for a little bit of time. I've gotten to work with a little bit, Robert Sofia, CEO of Snappy Kraken. Robert, really excited to have you on the show here today, be able to connect, be able to see you. And as you said, already doing a great job. You got the logo, got the brand front and center on the vest there. I love it. So I know we'll get to that, but good to see you here today.
Thank you, Jamie. It's good to be here. I love your podcast, and I'm glad to be a guest finally.
Awesome. Yeah, like finally. Well, it's getting done, so it happens. And I appreciate when people don't. It's funny. People who I know that ask me to be on the show, it always puts you in a weird place. So I'm glad that you didn't pressure me into bringing you on. You're here by my own choice.
Right,
So
that's true. Actually, I didn't have to ask. Thank you for not making me ask.
yeah. It's good. But excited to have you on. So for people who don't know you though, give the 20-second kind of who you are, what you do at Snappy, and then we'll get into some of our more fun stuff.
All right. The 22nd is, I'm the CEO, so I run the board meetings, I interface with the board, I get the execution and strategy done at the company to drive the growth. And that's about it. I mean, everything else, it's the 45 amazing people that do all the real work at my company.
Awesome. I've got two icebreaker questions I've typically started off with. And so the first one's the easier one, which is food, right? When you think about food, what's your favorite thing? Is it favorite thing to eat, last meal, favorite type of cuisine? What would it be that comes to mind immediately?
Yeah, well, I grew up, my mom is quite a French chef. So I grew up eating really high quality food. And I've also traveled a lot. So I love international cuisine. So it's really unusual, but I do not have a favorite food. Like I could list probably 20 things that are on my list of favorite foods, but if it's new, if it's unique, if it's high quality ingredients, if it's fresh, if it's prepared well, I'm probably gonna love it.
So, how did your mom get into? Was she a chef, classically trained, or just got very into French cooking?
Yeah, she's a self-proclaimed Francophile, but basically she's just had this love affair with all things French her whole life. And she learned French, she bought French cookbooks, she practiced the recipes, and no classical training at all, but just a lot of raw talent and a lot of commitment.
Yeah.
And yeah, I grew up benefiting from that. Not my waistline, but definitely my palate.
So did you pick up any of the cooking skills though? Are you a quality chef or?
Yeah, I'm not like my mom, that's for sure. But I did pick up a lot. My dad's side of the family, they're Italian. So my grandmother did all the big Italian meals, and I was getting the French from my mom's side. So I learned a lot, and I actually I had a big deal to close last week. Somebody flew into town to meet. They wanted to go out to eat. I had them over to the house and cooked for them. So that's something I love. That's actually one of my hobbies.
Awesome. And so the deal closed. You didn't ruin it with some bad food, huh?
No, I didn't. Not this time. That
Yeah.
potential always exists, but not this
Yeah.
time.
Awesome. Next question I love to ask is something that you've probably seen and helped advisors craft messaging around before too, which is what's that first experience with money that you had? So I love this because it's tells you a lot about kind of a person's past, whether they grew up abundance, good memories, bad memories, right? Trauma, whatever it might be.
Yeah. So, you're getting deep into the family history here now, Jamie. But my first experiences with money really have to do with my family. And I grew up in a family. My dad was a laborer. My mom was a homemaker. We didn't have much, and there was four kids. So, I grew up on free lunches, and my parents worked very hard. They taught me a great work ethic. They gave me a lot of love, but managing money and having money was not a thing. So for me, wanting to have nice things as a kid and knowing my parents couldn't always provide them, it motivated me to work very early. So I started getting jobs, mowing lawns, selling things. That I would buy candy in bulk with the money from the mowing lawns, and I would resell it at school to kids for profit. And I would start to buy my own things. And I remember, some of my first memories of money are actually like loaning my parents money when I was a kid. And it's a funny thing because it made me realize that I could hustle and work really hard and make more with my mind than I could with my back. And that shaped everything I did. So like when my friends got their first jobs at fast food restaurants and car washes, I was getting jobs in sales and retail. And I was trying to find mentors. And so really my first dealings with money shaped my entire career, my entire focus, the way I view saving, investing, and running my own business, being an entrepreneur.
Do you remember any first purchases that, like, so obviously you said, you're saving up so you could buy stuff yourself. Do you remember anything that you bought early on that you were like just really pumped to go out and get?
I do. I really do. My dad. I got to say, like, I have great, loving parents. But one summer, my dad didn't have money to get me new school shoes. My dad and mom, and so my dad actually was able to get some white new shoe polish and new laces. And so he polished up my tennis shoes. He put new laces on them. Used a black marker to like redo the Spalding logo on the side, and it was the best he could do. And I still was not happy. Like as a kid, I wanted new Nikes, and that stuck with me for a long time. I felt bad like going to school first day and not having new shoes, and ultimately it was shortly thereafter I started working and buying my own things. And one of the very first things that I bought was a new pair of Nikes, and I wore my new kicks to school, and I felt like I belonged. And in hindsight, that's really shallow. Like I know I didn't need new shoes to belong or be an individual, and today I could care less. Give me some Spaldings if they're comfortable. But when I was a kid, that was really important to me, and that was a real accomplishment to be able to buy my own new tennis shoes.
Well, kids can be harsh though, right? Like that's the
Yes,
thing,
that's right.
that definitely happens. And did you become like a shoe person over time too? I mean, we've got a couple, people out in our profession that are big into the kicks still. Are you one of them?
Yeah, I am, but my wife gets on me that I have more shoes than her, but I actually, most of my shoes are dress shoes, and like I wear like Magnani and Meslin like dress sneakers, so I got to have the gray and the brown and the black and the navy. It is a little problem. It is, but it's not about the label, it's just about the quality now.
Yeah. How'd you get into that? Like, what started interesting you about nicer shoes and even like, kind of dress sneaker kicks too?
Yeah, actually, this goes into branding a little bit. When I got in the financial industry, I was 23. I had been working at Ford before that, and I came out of the auto industry, and I went into a pretty well established RIA, and all the advisors had custom suits, nice shoes. This was the heyday of the wholesaler. So you remember, wholesaler shows up, new custom suit, shiny shoes, and I was like buying my suits at J.C. Penney's because in the car industry, guys don't dress, and I was like, wow, this is a different business. So I just, I pay attention to things, and I think it's a sign of EQ. When you see people around you a certain way and you want to grow in that business, you have to pick up on some cues, right? So I picked up on the cues, like these guys dress nice, and I started just noticing and learning and listening, and I upped my wardrobe. Now I'm a tech entrepreneur, and I can barely like take my jacket off because it's so entrenched in me now, or I can't go anywhere if my shoes aren't shined. But it's like the early days in the financial industry as a early part of my career.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it, being in the car industry. Was that kind of your first like post school job going into the car industry, automotive industry?
Yeah, that's my marketing chops. So while I was in school, like I said, I was working in retail. I actually worked for Freedman's Jewelers. I became the youngest manager in the country. I had my own store. I was 19. I had my own store. I was going to school, and ultimately, I just realized like I can't do school and work, so I just committed to my career. I left school early. I actually ended up getting a job at Ford in a pilot marketing program at one of their dealerships. It was an entry level position, but it was a brand new thing. Like, how can we build brand loyalty and sell more cars on the internet in 1999 or 2000? And so I piloted this program. I actually ended up designing one of the first CRMs with Ford. I ended up designing all the scripts, all the email templates. That was really all we used was a website, email, and phone. And I built what became known as the Business Development Center concept, which Ford first piloted. We ended up installing it in all the dealers around the country. I was one of their youngest executives. And then it became a concept. Every dealership now has an internet department or a BDC. So I was on the front end of that, and I got recruited away from Ford by a friend of mine who was an advisor at an RIA, and said, "Look, this industry is way behind. There's a ton of opportunity here." They had gone to an Excel meeting, so I can tell you about
Yeah.
Ron and Carson Group, and I think they had read the first version of Tested in the Trenches that just come out. He takes me to dinner. He throws me this book. He's like, "We want to do all this stuff. We need somebody to be our VP of marketing." And I was 23 years old. I thought a VP title in the finance industry, I'm in. And I jumped careers, and I've been in this industry ever since, and I love it.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I think that's hilarious. I've had a lot more of these stories since I've been here. I mean, uh with Carson, right? I knew of Ron. I've known Ron for a long time. Like a lot of people all said, "Hey, we know Ron." But like I didn't always realize how many people's businesses were shaped in the RIA world by, like Tested in the Trenches and Excel conferences for a while, right? Like I
Yeah.
knew of all of it, but it's been amazing how many conversations that I've had where somebody was like, "Oh yeah, I got a copy of that," and I left my bank job to go into financial services and planning because I read Tested in the Trenches, and I'm like, "Wow, that's pretty cool."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, honestly, like Ron, that book and a lot of the original peak program stuff shaped how I think about this business and helping advisors today. I mean, even the very first CRM that I installed in a financial planning practice and ran was Goldmine,
mm,
because Peak had a Goldmine overlay. Now, Goldmine is not even existent today.
yeah.
I don't know if they are. I don't think they are.
I think they
But
still are.
yeah,
They might still be around. Somebody brought it up recently. I thought I'd check. We'll have to look at
yeah,
see
I
if
don't
they're
know.
still around.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I owe Ron a bit of career shaping there, because that was where I started. Yep.
that's cool. Have you been to an Excel? Did you ever go to one?
Yeah, I went to one way back, actually, in the early 2000s. I went to one. In fact, when I got that job, they're like, "You're going to go to Excel. Your job is to implement everything in this book, and then bring in all your car dealershipy modern tech ideas, marketing edgy stuff, and marry it into all this stuff from Peak." And that's pretty much what I did. I went to one Excel conference. I haven't gone back. However, I'm very happy to say, for the first time in over a decade, we actually, as Snappy Kraken, are now partnering with Carson Coaching,
Yep.
and we're going to be exhibitors at the Peak Excel meeting coming up this year. So that'll be a fun thing for me to kind of like full circle. I went from being an attendee new in the industry to like having my own company and coming and sponsoring. So
Yeah.
that's fun.
That's pretty cool. So, I do. I mean, that whole transition though still really interests me. Like, how is it though that, like, I mean, obviously, like a CRM and this business development center at Ford for all the dealerships is a really big deal. And so, what was it though that like actually, like, do you remember what it was, or the kind of the trigger event that said, what, I am going to leave this industry where I've already done something really cool, obviously have built some credibility on my side here at Ford, right? To then leave and go join, the RIA industry, which, at that point, right, RIAs wouldn't have been as much of a, household name in the idea of an RIA, right? It's 20 years later, a little different, but, then, probably still right. That, as you said, wholesalers, insurance, variable life, all still, killing it from a business standpoint right back then.
Yeah. Well, actually, there were a number of reasons. First of all, I mentioned that I got that job basically, right after my first job, and leaving school and going into the auto business. I started at a pretty low level. Like it was better than being in the jewelry industry. I knew that wasn't for me. I did that through high school. That's how I got my first sales and business experience. But this was a level up for me. going into the auto industry. Well, then I was kind of in the same boat where I had started at this entry level position. And what I looked at is I was still getting compensated based on raises from where I had started, and I wasn't reaching the kind of revenue potential. Although I knew we were generating millions of dollars in additional sales at every Ford dealership from these efforts, I was not really tied into that. I was getting a salary. It was a small salary. I went back, I tried to renegotiate, and it wasn't working for me to reach the personal financial goals that I had. So that was number one. Number two was, you're young, you don't always know a good thing in your career when you have it. And I was just kind of looking for the next big thing, the next big adventure, which I'm glad it worked out for me. But a lot of kids have a tendency to do that. You're in your early 20s, you haven't really found your groove yet. You just kind of look for the next thing. So I was ready for a next big adventure. And when I saw the success my friend was having in that industry, all of his colleagues, what they were achieving, and then number one, it was a big title change. It was a VP title. Number two, it was a big fat raise. Number three, it was, in my mind, it was Wall Street. Like I'm moving up to Wall Street, and so it felt like a smart career move, and so I took it, and it turned out to be not for any of those reasons, actually. None of that stuff really matters or was even true. I could have been successful somewhere else. It was nothing like Wall Street, but I found that I really love the business. I love financial services. I love the ultimate mission of it to better people's lives. And I've always been able to take something that this industry is missing, and I'm still driving this agenda, but it's bold, fearless, standout, aggressive marketing that is still focused on helping people, but the industry is so generally conservative and old school that when you can find a new edge, a new marketing angle, and you can approach things in a fresh way before the consumer eye and constantly innovate that, it gives you a real edge. And with that firm where I started, I mean, we grew AUM from about 150 million to over like 650 million in less than 5 years. And that type of growth was because I brought in some of the car business marketing tactics, and I figured out how to make them compliant, and we really accelerated the business. And that's what I'm still trying to do for advisors, is get them out of their conservative comfort zone, take a little bit of risk, go a little bolder, go a little bigger, and hit those bogeys.
So I think this is a really interesting concept in the business world and like career development. You brought up, you get hired into roles, and probably everyone has seen it or has lived through it, right? You get hired in and you get put at a compensation range. And like, yeah, you're doing a great job and you help create something that's making millions of dollars for all these things, but they're kind of moving you up more normally, right? Like, and they're like, hey, well, you started here, we gave you a big raise. That's like a 30% increase. But you're like, but I started down here. And it seems like, and there's actually a lot of research to support this, that actually to make big jumps in salaries, you tend to have to leave, right? That the people who make the most money long term do not stay with one company for their whole career. I think it's like every 5 to 7 years or something. Some of the research says, like, you are better off jumping to make that, kind of comp increase. So like when you look back, I mean, do you ever provide advice to people around this early in their business careers? And like, what do you think about this? And has that influenced you then running your own company to making sure that when you do have good talent, that you're rewarding them and not saying, hey, like, let's just give you the normal, like you are exceptionally talented, so we are going to take care of you. Like, has that come into your mind as a leader now?
Oh, big time. Big time. And so as far as coaching people, like that's not my penchant. I do get invited to speak at universities and things like that occasionally about career development, and especially in marketing careers. But I mean, I don't spend a lot of time doing that. If I'm asked for advice, I will give it. But when it comes to the way I've run my own companies, I mean, this is my second venture. I've had extremely high loyalty rates. And what I have always done, and I continue to do, is I hire people based on talent, number one. I absolutely could care less about what they look like, where they've been from, what their schooling is. Like, it really doesn't matter to me. It matters, do they have the attitude and the talent? That's number one. I always try to get them at the best price. I mean, that's just smart business. But then when I see that I have an ambitious individual who's willing to really invest and they're hungry, I never shortchange them. And I don't ever pull that card like, well, you got the 20% raise. I've had that done to me. And yes, it did shape how I think about things. And so it's not uncommon actually I could tell you 10 or 15 individuals in my company, who've come in and I started them out, they might have been working with me. Some have come from my last company. 10 years ago, I hired them for $12 an hour, and today they're making high six figures. And that's because when they advance our goals and I'm aligned with their goals as well, then we're all gonna succeed together. And that's just part of my philosophy. And I think it's very important to retaining people. Or what happens is you train them, you cultivate them, they get to a point where they've outgrown you, and then you miss out on all that equity that you built up. And yeah, I don't believe in that.
So you mentioned this is kind of your second, you know, adventure in the sense of building. So I like that word. So what was the first one? So you obviously were with the RIA for a while. And so what came after that, and when did you kind of start up your first business?
Yeah, 2009. So in 2009, out of the RIA, what was happening is because we had gotten all that growth, our broker dealer noticed and invited us to the conference to start to share our marketing techniques. And we started getting phone calls from advisors all the time in the network asking, how are you doing this? Can I have your mailers? Can I use your newsletter? Do you have can I share your PowerPoint presentation with me? And I was working there as the VP of marketing, and now all of a sudden I was spending hours on the phone with advisors for free. And so the head of that business, actually the partners of that business and I decided that we should just spin off an outside business activity as a marketing company. And it was called Platinum Advisor Strategies. We launched that. It was like a consulting and marketing agency for advisors. We did all their newsletter, their brochures, their websites, all that stuff. And I grew that to about 500 advisors. It was service heavy, so it didn't scale. So in 2016, it was a good lifestyle business, but I was never going to get it to a $100 million valuation. So basically, my partners and I, they're advisors. That's where they were focused. I sold them my third of the company. They ultimately sold their 2/3 of the company to FMG Suite. So
Mm-hmm.
FMG Suite bought that. And I started Snappy Kraken in 2016. So for 7 years, that was Platinum. And then in 2016, almost 5 years ago now, launched Snappy Kraken.
Yeah, so I've probably used something that you built back then. I was like, I think FMG Suite, who, probably bought up a lot of people.
A few, yeah, a few.
Yeah, a few. So yeah, you sold that, and was it like, did you know that you were going to do Snappy Kraken when you were kind of exiting there? Was that like in your mind that, I'm going to go do this?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. So basically, what happened was, again, career development, right? I was there for 7 years. The business had hit a growth ceiling, and I knew the only way to get beyond that was to create more scale inside the business, and that was going to take a real investment in technology. My partners were not active in the business. They were primarily running their practice. And it was a cash cow. It was a great lifestyle business. So when we talked about putting more money into technology, there was two options. Either we were going to get really diluted and take some funding, or we were going to stop pulling out all the cash and reinvest it. And my partners, they just weren't interested in that. They had a good recurring revenue stream coming off the business. They did not want to take dilution, and they did not want to take smaller checks. So we had a difference of opinion, and ultimately my CTO and CMO at that company are my partners now in Snappy Kraken, Brad Delashay and Angel Gonzalez. They were my CTO and CMO there. They're my CTO and CMO here. And they said, look, we can build this thing. We'll build it inside of Platinum. Give us some equity. Again, they wouldn't give up the equity. So it was just a difference of opinion. Like I believe in tying people in. I have an ISO plan for my employees. They all get incentive stock options. My founding partners all have a nice chunk of equity. They are building wealth rapidly, and that's what I believe in. So I tie them all in, and we decide we're going to go after this thing. And it took us a couple of years to build. It was more expensive, and it took longer than we expected. But now we're growing really fast, and it's been great. It's been a good journey.
I think looking back too, I like this dynamic of the business world. You probably had the thought, you had the business, you're like, could we build this internally? And the answer is still probably yes. You probably could have. Do sometimes though, like if you look back, do you think it might have been easier actually to build it externally without, because all of a sudden, like building something inside of a system with existing business structure can be hard, right? Because then it's like, well, what does this mean for our current clients? And it meant, what does it mean for cash flow in that situation? But like, do you kind of see that as like, hey, that was actually the right outcome, that this maybe was better to build it from the ground up and a little bit fresher?
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. Now, that's hindsight though, right? Like at the
Yep.
time, I'm like, hey, we're already on second base. Why go back to home
Yeah.
base? But in hindsight, yes, it was great. We started from the ground up, and as the business matured, now a lot of my clients from back there are now using our system, and they're like, wow, this is kind of like what you had over here, but now it's all automated. I'm like, yeah, exactly. And that was the vision.
And where'd the name come from? So obviously it's a very cool name. I love the logo. So where'd the name come out from? What was there a story behind it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Being in marketing for my entire career, I've always known what makes a great brand. And also, I branded hundreds of advisors. And when I had platinum, it was very similar to other typical industry brands. There's a feel in the industry. It's like high end. It's like, pinnacle, platinum,
Peak.
elite. I didn't say it, you said it. But yeah, you get it. I mean, it's very literal.
Yeah.
And if you would go to a conference like TD Ameritrade, for example, where there's 1,000 booths, or Schwab or something like that, and you just see all these booths and everything's blue and green. It's like a sea of blue and green. And then maybe there's an orange one, but everybody kind of follows the mold. And I knew we had to break the mold. So there was that. That was number one. Number two, it had to actually relate to our business in some way. All the URLs had to be available. All the social media handles had to be available. Everything had to be .com, and no like underscores. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we started a naming exercise, and Snappy Kraken is basically, it's an API junction. There is one central hub, and that hub connects through the API dozens of other services for landing page management, reporting, social posting, soon to be text messaging, all these other things. They're like tentacles that go out, and that got us to Octopus, got us to Kraken. And if you study marketing, you know that strong consonant sounds are particularly memorable. They're sticky. So Snappy Kraken, it makes a good strong mental imprint. And then we went with the red, and the shades make it cool, and it's just like it checks all the branding boxes. It's bold, it's unique, it's got strong consonant sounds, it relates to the business, it's fun, it's fresh, it's different from everybody else, and so we chose it.
Yeah. I do feel like I want a Snappy Kraken theme song though. So I don't know if you have one, but somebody needs to create a Snappy Kraken theme song.
It might be like a pirate song.
Yeah.
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 I'll
So
think about that.
yeah, I'll think about it. There was / is a band that does mostly pirate metal music, and that would be a good one for it. So they probably they might even say Kraken a bunch of times and in some of the songs. So that would be a good starting point there. We could just splice some of that together.
I like the idea, Jamie. I like the creative thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something. I say I have thoughts and ideas, and I don't know which ones are which sometimes. So
Actually, that's an interesting and subtle distinction, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Like a lot of animals have thoughts. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an idea.
Yeah. I think that's
Very
an
cool.
idea. I could use that somewhere. I'm
Yeah.
gonna actually stew on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, tell us a little bit about. So, you mentioned before you like to find gaps in what's out there. You like to be bold. So, the advisor marketing world, probably, I don't know. I shouldn't say probably is still probably a decade behind the rest of the marketing world, right? Regulations, stuff like that. It holds things back a little bit, right? So, like, we can't go as bold as somebody might be able to go with, like alcohol. I mean, they basically do whatever they want. Then they say drink responsibly at the end. They're like parties, drinks, boats, drink responsibly though. Like, I mean, imagine like if we had the investing version of that, which is just like investing, go to the moon, millionaire, but invest
It's called
responsibly.
Reddit. It's called
Yeah.
Reddit.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I mean, where do you think that the advisor marketing world is going? What's the biggest gap today? And what's going to start differentiating advisors over the next 10 years? I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that you've built is the core of the business, right? Like this is stuff to me, like it's, we've got to be there or you're going to be left behind. But what's going to push people ahead of the pack moving forward?
Right. Well, look, I would be extremely egotistical if I said that was marketing. I mean, the things that are really going to differentiate advisors, move them to the head of the pack, and ensure their long-term success, it's not marketing. It's the other business choices they make, which you're well informed about, which Carson Group is well informed about. And it all relates to how well we serve the client and how well we can serve the next generation and how well we're creating an experience that's, from end to end great for the clients and it helps them achieve their goals. And those are all the things that really matter. And that's just touching the surface. But when it comes to marketing, that's where you have a lot of great advisors who have a lot of really big value to deliver, but they struggle to package it right. Marketing is packaging. I just got this Apple Watch. I've never had an Apple Watch. My wife has been raving about it for so long. I finally decided, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get an Apple Watch because particularly the fitness stuff, and I got to lose the COVID weight. So anyway, I get the Apple Watch, and I wanted a second band, and it's a rubber. It's a rubber band. It's a good quality band, but it's probably $5 or less to manufacture. And I don't know, don't quote me on that, by the way. But nonetheless, whatever it is, it's cheap. It's not $80.
Mhm.
But I ordered the extra band, and the band could have come in a plastic bag. I would have cared less. But it came in a box with like 4 layers and instructions and everything, little green arrow on the plastic to show me where to peel. And it was presented and it fit tight in the packaging. That's how I think about this business. Like, people can get bands. You can get bands a lot of places. Now, make a good quality band. That's your job as the advisor, right? Make a good product. Make sure it meets all the things that the consumer needs. But then don't forget that the packaging matters too. And that's the difference between charging $10 and charging $80 for the same rubber band. And this is where I think marketing matters and where we want to have an impact is we want to help advisors take their unique value where that fits and then not just say, well, I have a great business, I serve my clients well, and the business is going to come because I do the right things, because that mindset does exist out there. I just do the right things and the business will come. And that may be true for a modest business, but if you really want to grow, if you really want to grow an enterprise, then you need I'm gonna use the Carsonism. Here you go. You need the substance and the sizzle. And that's what I think the opportunity is. If advisors can learn how to be comfortable with a little bit of sizzle and learn the angles that they can approach the market that will be fresh, unique, and bold, then all that work they put into designing the best band will now be amplified, and then the market will really find them. And that's where I see the opportunity. And if you look at the advisors, sorry, I'm just you got me on a passion point here. But, you see the advisors that are really good at this, that have a loud voice. They're not afraid to stand out, do things differently, and they're getting a ton of attention. They have a lot of influence. And I think there's some great advisors out there that are just missing that opportunity because they don't put the marketing hat on enough.
When you look at, I mean, you mentioned kind of the watch and the band. What brands do you really like out there? And it doesn't have to be in the financial space, but like, what do you watch and say like they're doing a really good job when branding, marketing, PR, that whole grouping together, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of them, and some of them are in the industry and some of them are not. But um, you know, Cash App is a small example of really incredible social media presence. I mean, I already mentioned Apple on the premium side. When you look at all the big robo advisors and personal finance platforms, I mean, Public, for example, I mean, they're nailing it. They're nailing the messaging down, and they're really speaking to their audience. Lululemon. I mean, these are cited all the time. The Pelotons of the world. But I take note. Those are like mainstream examples, but I like to take note of even small brands. I think this is more relevant for us. Small brands that make big moves. Because a lot of those companies I just named, they've got hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. And it's very difficult for a advisor with a small practice or a few employees, or they just hired their first marketing director, to execute on a level like that. And it actually sets sort of false expectations. Like every marketing consultant will tell you all the things you should do. Like, you got to be on social media, you got to be producing unique content, you got to have your own voice, do videos, do a podcast, be on social every single day engaging, write a blog, send a newsletter, create email nurturing sequences, generate new offers, put those on. Like, come on. When are you going to have time to serve a client? So what I like to see is I like to see smaller brands that do really cool single things that tend to be a catapult. And an example of that, I'll just take one. I think it really applies to this industry. Is Old Spice. Like, you look at what Old Spice was basically, back in the 90s. It was my grandfather's aftershave. But then they did the Smell Like a Man campaign, and it was just one idea. It was, let's put this super fit, super macho guy that the guys will want to be like and the girls will swoon over on a centaur, and this is the man your man should smell like. And it was so edgy, so different. This is the point. The advisors are never going to do something like that, but it was so different that it went viral. It spun off a massive series, their YouTube channel, and there's a lot of other examples like that where what I think advisors should spend time on is saying, what can I do in my market for my audience that will be really different from what anybody else targeting my audience is doing right now. It doesn't have to be extreme, but just really different that'll make people go, "What? Oh, that's a new note. I haven't heard that note before." And that's what I watch for. I actually keep a little idea book, and when I see a piece of marketing that catches my eye, I don't care what brand it is. I don't care what company it is. It means they did something different that broke through the noise, and that's what I study. What was it about that made them get my attention, that cut through the clutter? That's the kind of stuff I like to use as examples.
Yeah, there's he's got a little bit more notoriety since, but I forget the guy's name. I'll have to look it up here maybe while we're still on, so I can name drop him in. But he runs the like minor league baseball team in Savannah, the Savannah Bananas guy. Have you ever seen his stuff?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay. Well, you'll have to check it out. He does like really, really cool stuff. And he runs like this minor league team. And, there's all these stories now about how well they've done. But like he like renamed them Pick Bananas, and he wears these bright yellow suits and a top hat. And like it's, like you're scrolling through stuff and you're like, well, what is this?
Yes.
Literally
Yeah.
just catches your eye. And I've seen so many of his things now. And I found it really impressive because it just, otherwise I wouldn't know Savannah, had a minor league baseball team, but I do now. And
Yeah.
like, I think that's cool. I guess it takes a level of what is it, like confidence or boldness to step out though, right? You mentioned the RIA and advisor world, almost without a doubt, even a lot of the people that are a little bit more edgier still really fall pretty closely in line, right? I mean, like I can't think of a lot of advisor stuff that's, as you said, like I can't think of anything that's a lot like as bold as like Old Spice went, right? With marketing. Like it's still, even if it's fresher, it doesn't feel as stodgy. It's a little bit more casual. Like that's the like bold stuff now. Like we got away from like suits and ties and the whole team standing in one photo on the front page, like with mahogany shelving behind you, right? Like, and we didn't have to name like everything as peak and pinnacle and top of the round table. Like everything was named that, right? Like it was all, this is the top level and that's where you want to be. And I think things have changed from that a little bit. But is there anyone in the space that you think's doing something from an advisor standpoint that is really bold, that stands out? Like when you think about that, is anyone doing a great job at that yet, or you think that's still to come?
Yeah, I mean, there are companies doing a great job at that. Elvest, for example, Altruist. But let me give you some more specific examples. And there's, by the way, there's a lot of niche planners that do that. I don't, if you, as some of the younger, newer advisors coming to the space, they are very creative, and they're coming up with brands that are unique. I just think of one like Beyond Your Hammock. It's about the retirement lifestyle, and there's a number of them that I've seen that I've done some impressive things. But here are a few, like, I think of examples where you can do that without, you don't have to be in a yellow suit with a yellow top hat, but it's a principle. The principle is do it different. That's the principle, so that you stand out without looking ludicrous. I mean, I can get away with this because we're a marketing company. Advisors, this is not a brand that will get respect as a financial company. All right. So we understand that. Like, you wouldn't name your financial company MailChimp either, but it works because they're email marketing, right? So I understand it's different. I'm not saying be like us, I'm saying be different. Case in point, worked with a firm in a retirement center, highly concentrated, a lot of retirees. That was their target market. So they're putting ads in every retirement publication. And what are they doing? They're either the pictures of them in their office, or they're pictures of retirees, people living the lifestyle. But guess what? Every other business advertising in the magazine is doing retirement lifestyle ads. So there is absolutely zero recognition as people are flipping. It's just, you can't even tell the difference between the ads and the articles. They wanted to get noticed. They wanted to stand out. So what do? We got a stock photo of a 60-year-old man, but he was skydiving. That was step one. Step two, we colored his hair. We made his hair a bright color, bright blue. Number three, we flipped him upside down in the ad. Big head, 60-year-old guy, blue hair, upside down on the page. Now, conservative financial planning firm, conservative logo, conservative messaging. The bottom, live richly, live the life you dream of. This person always dreamed of skydiving. Now they're retired and they're doing the things they love. Make sure you can afford to do the things you love in retirement, right? This is just an example, a little bold, a little different. It actually started generating phone calls and clicks. Here's another example. You might remember some years ago, Hightower. The whole fiduciary, before the whole, everybody was a fiduciary, before everyone was, and it was no longer a differentiator. Do you remember they did a video series on the butcher versus the dietitian? It was a whiteboard animation video, but it talked about how A broker is like a butcher. All they have to sell is meat. And a fiduciary is like a dietitian. They care about your health. All right. You take an issue in the industry, you take your angle, and now you creatively approach it. That video was very effective. In fact, it actually went viral on an advisor level, hundreds of thousands of views. You can still find it on YouTube. Here's another example. I'll give you one more and then I'll shut up. But working with some advisors in a small town doing localized marketing. There is literally the diner where everyone goes, and that breakfast placemat is like the place. Matt, you want to be on that placemat. So, I meet with them. I'm going to help them with some strategy. We sit down at the table. They point out they're out on the placemat, and it was like every other realtor's ad, and
those little squares.
headshot. First of all, it's monochromatic, so no color differentiation. It's the headshot, the phone number, the website. Call for a financial review, free financial review. No, not getting any calls, not getting any clicks. So what do? We created a new ad. We filled the whole block with solid green. So instead of, it was just solid green. One big headline. Are you sure you're not paying too much in taxes? It doesn't have a find out. Simple URL. QR code. That was it. Now, what happened was, because every other ad had lots of text, lots of white space, lots of faces, now this thing just stood out like a big stain. You had to read it. You look down, are you paying too much in taxes? Well, I don't know. How do I know I'm not? Visit. They started getting clicks. They started getting leads. Point is, you don't have to go crazy. You just have to be different from the setting in which you are being marketed and promoted.
Wow, that was a good piece there. I was like, I always like it when I hear it. It just comes together, and you close that one off well. So good job.
Okay, well, I do a lot of marketing talking. Probably I talk too much, Jamie, but this is what I love.
Well, luckily you're on a podcast, and that's the whole point of them, right?
That's right.
So kind of, I know, being cognizant of time, I always kind of leave at the end the like broader looking forward vision, right? So what is the, whether it's your personal company vision, what's the legacy that you want to kind of work towards now? Like, what is that bigger picture that you are aiming at?
Yeah. Actually, we as a company, we have a 3-year vivid vision that we are 1 year into. So I recommend highly a book by Cameron Herold called Vivid Vision. It was recommended to me by one of my mentors, and I know exactly where our company is going to be in 3 years. We're 1 year in, and we have achieved a third of it. And for me, in my business, it's about helping more advisors grow. Snappy Kraken is not an automated marketing platform. That's what everybody thinks we are. Oh, you're an automated marketing platform. You're like FMG Suite. You're like Hearsay. You're like Advisor Stream. We are not. We are a growth program. And there is a component of automation, but there's a component of education, there's a component of content, and there's a component of automation. And we are integrating with all the other platforms in the industry. And that's my legacy. Like what we do when advisors tell us, I grew my business 30% faster last year because of your growth program. That's what I get out of bed for in the morning. Right after that, or right at the same level with it, I don't really know, is my employees who say, I love working here. This is the best job I've ever had. One of my employees, actually, I will say a career high for me. I hired somebody 6 years ago at about $15 an hour. She's making 6 figures now. And she just hired a financial advisor for the first time in her life. She sent me messages, for the first time in my life, I'm financially stable. And that's what it's about, right? Like this industry, business can accomplish a lot of things, but in this industry especially, we have a chance to better a lot of people's financial lives by not being personally greedy, paying people well, regardless of their age, race, orientation, we're going to take care of people. We're going to do the same thing for our clients, for the public. We're going to teach them how to use money properly and save properly and make good financial decisions, how to invest wisely. And for me, like that's my vision. Help more advisors do that and help my employees achieve the same thing, so they need advisors too. And if I can get up every day and do that, I don't know where the end is, but I sure am fortunate to have this opportunity. I know that.
That's awesome. And yeah, you've gotten my mind back in the marketing, thought process today. And like, what is it that, it just gets me excited and thinking about different things. So it's fun because I get a lot into the weeds of, retirement plans a lot of days. And you don't market anything about that. Like, like,
But actually,
yeah.
I just got to tell you, Jamie, like when you show up on camera with your big hair, okay,
Mm-hmm.
your Henley with a jacket on, and your whiteboard or your pieces of paper with your big marker scratches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you talk now, what you do in that setting, instead of being in a green studio with a monitor next to you, you portray a lot of authenticity, and it is unique. It is I haven't seen anybody else with that stick inside of our industry. So you are doing that. So you are absolutely saying, how can I present this information in a different way? And so that you are actually a case study in how advisors can do the same thing if they just think about, how do I present this differently? So you're
Yeah,
doing a good job.
those cards, or I rotate, and I've mixed a bunch of things. I've done like a chalkboard a couple times. I've done the iPad, which is more of the whiteboard. A lot of times I'm just using the paper. That's the easiest, right? Like when I'm pressed for time, and as you said, it's scratch, it's barely readable, but you're like, what is that? And this was pretty funny. So we had a client join one of our advisors who I've never spoken to, who's actually never clicked a like on a video, but has said that they've watched like 2 dozen of my videos, and like basically was the reason that they were signing with the advisor because they saw that I was on their team. And I'm like, I don't even know who this person is. And it's funny because the person told me their name, and I'm like, I don't think they've ever liked. And it's weird because they get, people don't always interact with things. And they're like, oh, I watch all your videos. And like, same thing with you. Like you see them, maybe you'll like one every once in a while, but you know that they're there. And yeah, it's an interesting thing. So like sometimes I think that's a great lesson for advisors with marketing, right? Is some of the stuff you're doing might be working early on, even when you don't see all of the stuff coming in, right? That's probably something you've had to explain to a lot of people when it comes to marketing.
Yes, you just said it. I'm not going to repeat it, but you are absolutely correct. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, last thing, I know we're at time, and so I want to be respectful of that. Best way to interact with you and the company website, Twitter, all the
Yeah.
self-promotional marketing branding stuff we need to do.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Hey, with me, honestly, Twitter is the best place to interact with me. Um, if you call the company, I might never get your voicemail, and you probably will never get to me. But interact with me on Twitter. I love that. And then as far as the company, if you're interested in Snappy Kraken, go to snappykraken.com, and you can learn all about us.
And it's Kraken, right? So yeah, there's what if most people put a C in there too, right?
A lot of people do. We actually own about 30 variations of
Oh.
.coms around the spelling of Snappy Kraken because of how many ways it gets misspelled.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Just rerouting them all back in, so they'll get
Bunch of
there one way or
redirects,
another.
man. Bunch of redirects. That's right.
Is there one that's most commonly misspelled? Do you look at that? Like which one gets the most clicks into?
Yep. Kraken.
Okay, but you have that one too, so there you go.
Oh yeah, no,
Right?
we
Yeah,
got all we got them
you
all.
got it covered. So spell it however you like, and you will still get there.
Right. It's true. It really is true.
Awesome. Well, hey, Robert, this is awesome. Great to see you. Look forward to seeing you later this year in person too, and getting
Absolutely.
spend some time with you. But thanks for all of your wisdom here. This was great. It was a lot of fun. I know our listeners will benefit from it, and
Great.
yeah, all the listeners, thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Framework Podcast.